Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. We hope that tonight is very much of an encouragement to each of you. So my name is Liz Lavoie. I work here at Boyce College and Southern Seminary. I've been here for a little under 2 years. I'm actually originally from California, but moved here with my husband, Austin, and he is currently a Southern Seminary student pursuing his MDiv, and I work here on campus. And so I've kind of been in a few different departments, and now I get to work for Boyce College, specifically doing events and student activities. And it's just such an honor, a gift to work with students. That's something that I love getting to do. And so I'm excited to be here tonight. So I'm gonna have Dr. Byler, if you wanna go ahead and introduce yourself first.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alicia Byler, and I'm originally from Toledo, Ohio. And then I moved to South Carolina for about 11 years or so with a little time spent overseas in Turkey, where I was working on my master's and PhD, and then also teaching English to international students. And so just about 2 years ago, I got the opportunity to come here to Boyce, where I'm a professor for English and linguistics. I just really love getting to share how language is such a gift from the Lord and how it sets us apart from creation. And so it is a joy to get to minister to these students and help them steward the responsibility and also the joy of language. So I'm really excited to be here.
And then Karen, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Karen Chong, and I am married to Robert Chong. We spent a lot of time at Southern Seminary. He did get his master's and PhD from Southern, and I worked in the Health and Rec Center for 12 and a half years. Fitness was my background, and so I ran the rec center for many, many years. Our kids all grew up and had a great time in the rec center. We have 3 grown children. We have 2 sons-in-law that we love dearly, 4 grandchildren. Our newest one is just 4 weeks old, and he lives in Louisville here with us, but our other 3 live in Lyon, France, where our daughter and son-in-law are missionaries there. We sent them out from Sojourn Midtown about 7.5 years ago. I am a deacon of care at Sojourn Midtown. Robert and I have been serving in a caring ministry for about 25 years, and 15 of those years it's been at Sojourn Midtown. So I'm really thankful for your time tonight, and I look forward to our time together.
Thank you so much. And then we'll hand it off to Nora.
Muted myself. Hello, I'm Nora Allison. I am married to Greg Allison. He teaches at the seminary, teaches theology there. We have 3 grown children, 2 girls and a boy. One is in Seattle, our oldest, and the second is also in France, a missionary there. And then the third is a son, and he's here in Louisville, and they have their second baby due last week. So we're hoping that he comes any day now. That'll make number 11 grandchildren for us. So we're very excited about that. I am on the staff at Sojourn East here in Louisville. My responsibilities involve directing the women in ministry there and also helping with the equipping ministry. So any ways that we can help foster discipleship and growth among all our people at Sojourn East. I have been there for quite a while, paid for less time than that. So I don't know when it starts and when it ends, but it's been just a real joy to work with the women and to get to know them a little bit and to see how hungry they are to grow in the Lord and grow in their knowledge of the word.
So for those of you who may not know exactly what this virtual event is all about, I wanted to quickly explain the vision and the mission of it, since I know that it is primarily hosted for women that are currently studying with online learning at Southern Seminary and Boyce College, but there's also women who we have invited and we love for them to join, whether they're local in Louisville, maybe a part of a church here, or if they're from a different state. We've had people reach out to us that have said, I'm a student, but can Is it okay if my wife is invited? Absolutely. If a family member is invited? Absolutely. If a friend is invited? Absolutely. And so we wanted to invite just any women that wanted to come. And so the whole point of Women on Mission, equipping and encouraging women in their education, career, and calling, began when we met with a group of online students, and we simply asked the question, what are some challenges and struggles that you encounter as a woman in seminary or in ministry? And so I wanted to list off what was shared quickly. And so there are about 8 that I'm going to share. I'm just going to list them off very quickly. So some of the common struggles and challenges that they had shared with us were some barriers like lack of opportunities, lack of financial resources, sometimes asking the question, is it worth getting a degree in seminary? Is it worth the investment? Another barrier or struggle was how to get creative with a small budget. Will I be paid to be on church staff? Again, is it worth the investment? Not having connections, struggling to find other women that are also pursuing seminary, feelings of loneliness, potentially because of not having those connections, but also being a single woman in seminary and in ministry, and the difficulty of finding mentors in ministry, and then feeling the lack of opportunities, specifically feeling as though they lack connections, really to find other female role models, especially if most of the professors are males, and struggling to work on church staff and feeling like your voice is heard and that you're being seen, especially when working with men, and just struggling to navigate and figuring out how to contribute to the local church, wondering how to use the gifts that God has given them, and if it's not necessarily within a maybe typical role, such as women's ministry specifically. And so the women had shared that with us. And as we were preparing for tonight, I wanted to share these 3 verses that came to mind, and you can jot them down quickly, or I'll also make sure to include them in the Zoom chat for you to read and reference later. But what came to mind was Matthew 6:25-33, where the Lord talks about not worrying, but to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and he'll provide and he'll sustain us and take care of the rest. And Matthew 11:28-30, where Jesus said, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Learn from me. And then lastly, 2 Corinthians 12:9, where Jesus said, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is displayed in your weakness. And so I wanted to share those scriptures with you tonight. If you're in a season where you are feeling discouraged or defeated or overwhelmed, maybe you're dealing with worry and anxiety, maybe you're dealing with weariness and feeling very tired, or maybe you're feeling inadequate or struggling with your weaknesses, I want you to know that the Lord can work in and through you. And my prayer is that tonight that you leave encouraged, meeting other women here, getting their phone numbers and being able to connect with them and stay in touch, but also to just hear from other women who are serving in different leadership roles and contexts. And I truly believe that it will be at a time where you are really not just encouraged, but also leave here feeling uplifted and equipped. And so with that, we are going to start off with the first question I would love to ask our panelists. If you could go back to your younger self, however young, you don't have to specify your age if you don't want to, but whether that was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or maybe even 1 year ago, what kind of advice would you give to yourself based off of what you know now in reference to the role that you're in, whether as a professor or as a church staff? So I'm going to go ahead and Nora, if you want to kick us off.
You bet. I think this is a great question. And I think there are a number of ways to approach it. But I think one of the things I would say is, first of all, just don't ever neglect your relationship with God. like get to know him well, grow in wisdom from him and in wisdom from the word, because those are the things that are going to, you know, build you up as a person. And those things can't be taken away no matter what role or if your role would change. Another thing I would say to myself is, no matter what title or position you have, it doesn't mean you know anything. And so I think you just have to realize that there are so many resources out there that God has put around you. So get to know people who have been doing this longer than you have, or who have a different perspective. Listen, talk to them. You may not put everything into practice, but I wish I had gotten more input from more people right from the start. And then kind of going along with that, get to, like in my position as a women's director or whoever you work with, get to know those people. Because in people's uniquenesses, I think how you minister to people really depends a little bit on who you have in front of you and what their needs are. So those would be the main things. Know the Lord, know your people, and then seek out advice and help from others who have traveled that road before.
I think Nora covered that really well. The only thing I would add to that is don't be afraid to take the initiative. I think sometimes as younger women, we might feel like it's a burden to ask these women to mentor us, or, we may not want to feel imposing. And so we wait to be asked, and they just may not know that you're interested in that if your church doesn't have a mechanism for that. So don't be afraid to take initiative in asking other women and making connections, but also in other things. And I think that leads me to the other main advice I would go back and tell myself, which is just to keep the bigger picture in mind and to live with open hands. I think too often we get, especially when you're just starting out or you're starting a new position, we kind of get laser focused and we overthink all the things. And I think if we just keep the bigger picture in mind of whose we are and the Lord's kingdom eternally in mind, I think it helps us to make better decisions. And so my friends always make fun of me. I've had this habit since I was a kid. Regardless of the book, I always read the last page first, which is, some people say, is a terrible habit. But I personally think it's great because it affects the way I read the rest of the book. It changes how I encounter the middle of the book. And I think that's a really good parallel for how we're living now, because we know the end of our story. And so just to take the pressure off yourself and just to remind yourselves of the bigger picture, I think helps you think of yourself less primarily.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, y'all gave some great words of encouragement for sure. As one who cares for people, Nora, both ladies touched on this, but one of the things that I would love to have told myself back then is that abiding in the love of Christ is God's primary way of counteracting the fall. And I say that because I sit with ladies all the time, and they have been impacted by pain and suffering and trauma and all of those things. And so just keeping that big picture in mind is really, I wish I would have known that going into a caring ministry. Also, I think the other thing that I would say is living with God, abiding in his word daily, enables us to live for God. We can't live for God if we're not living with God, because we can't fix anybody's problem. We can't change their story. Our comfort only goes so far. I think the other thing is just really encouraging our women to know that they were never created to know and experience evil. And so I know I'm saying a bunch of things related to caring, but that's where I traffic most of the time. And so these are some truths God's taught me over the years that have brought much comfort to my story, that has pain and trauma in it. And God's got me on a road of healing. So those would be some of the things I would share.
Thank you so much. I think that was really insightful to hear not only some wisdom that is really practical, but also remembering that really, whether if it's, pursuing seminary, working in ministry, and even just being a believer regardless of career, like each of you mentioned, regardless of title, whatever work that we do as believers, we need the Lord. We can't serve others if we don't even know the Lord personally, and if we're not spending time in the Word, because that's our source of strength and of hope and peace